Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I think we've been connected to Istanbul, Anand. So we're we're there. So I was saying when I was muted that seems kind of a meta experience, right? Like this is also new, like where we can't see our fellow panelists or the audience, but we trust the power of the internet that like you are there. So so thank you for having us. And let me introduce myself just at first. Marina, is it okay to start or?
I didn't.
Yes?
Sorry.
Okay. I guess we'll start. Yeah, it's my pleasure to introduce the panel about digital patrons and talk with amazing panelists about the role of NFT collectors in the traditional art world. And I'm going to be your moderator for today. So my name is Fanny Lakoubay. I've been working in the art and tech market for many years and fell into the crypto art and NFT rabbit hole back in 2018, and now advising artists, collectors, and institutions who want to join the fund. All right, so let's go back in time to March 2021, when the traditional art world kind of discovered the word NFT via the infamous sale that happened at Christie's of the digital artist people, and I'm sure it rings a bell. I mean, it should, because every article still today like refer to that sale. It seems that this is the only thing that happened, but it really hasn't. So we're gonna cover a lot today on how the traditional art world and the NFT world got more and more tangled and kind of, intertwined over the past year. Sometimes like not in the best way. These two worlds seems to be looking at each other at best with doubt and at worst with a lot of disrespect. Let's be honest about it. So we're going to try to change the dialect and opposition today. And to do that, I think we have the best people to help us untangle all of that. So we are actually joined by Anand Venkateshwaran. I'm sorry if I did not pronounce it well.
That's perfect. I'm in this.
Okay. Well, you'll tell me afterwards, like, honestly. Who is now writing a lot about crypto and is an NFT collector, and you might know him as well from his previous role as Twobadour, as steward of the Metaverse Fund, where he developed alongside Metakovan one of the most valuable NFT collection. Thank you for being here, Anand. Where are you calling from?
Interestingly, I'm calling from the south of India. It's a place called Twobadour.
Okay.
Like by at the foot of a little hill, so you can hear a lot of bird sound and insects in the background. So
I can. This is great. I'm calling from New York, so no such thing. You might hear helicopters and fire alarms, but that's it. So thanks for being with us. And so we have Ania, Catherine, and Dejha Ti. Are you guys here?
Hello, we are here.
Okay, so I think they're muted, but I think Marina, you will have to unmute them, so I can.
Yes, we are here.
We're here. Hi, Fanny.
Great. Hi. Thanks a lot for joining. And if you haven't seen Ania and Dejha's work exhibited at the fair in Istanbul, like they're experiential artists known as Operator LA, and they're doing so many things. It's hard to summarize, but it's always around bringing together performance art, technology, immersive art, and a lot more. They won the Lumen Prize in 2021 with a project called I'd Rather Be in the Dark Silence Than. And then stemming from this project, they actually just launched a privacy collection where they sold their first NFT, like being part of that collection back in April. So very, very timely to have you guys here. And last but not least, we have Zeynep, Utku, who founded Global Art, in 2015, an advisory firm where she works a lot with corporations and advising them how to build and manage art collections. And she's also the head of growth for Pictures This Art, where she's taking care of the metaverse and NFT subjects there. So that's kind of, like just to set the tone where who is here today, from where, and why. But I do want to first start asking you guys, like, each of you, like, one question about your personal experience of, and asking you, like, to give us, like, maybe one example over the past years that, like, you've seen these, like, NFT and traditional art world, like, clash. And can be an anecdote, a personal story, or a funny story. I'll let you be the judge of it, but I think it would be helping us to understand where we're coming from. So maybe Anand, if you want to start, I'll give you the mic. Also because you're the only man of that panel, so I have to, give you priority.
Thank you, Fanny. That was a wonderful intro, and it's great to know the other panelists also. We would love to know you more in person later on. And what Fanny described with your work is fascinating, so I'd love to be involved in something like that. So, getting back to Fanny's question, yes, I think sort of our brush with traditional art has been, it's more a continuum rather than a story, but maybe I can condense it to one particular, to the beginning of the incident. The reaction to the Big People incident, as I call it, has been twofold, right? It's been extreme on both ends. On the one side, what we discovered in the process of participating in that auction itself is that it was completely antithetical to what we were used to in the crypto space. In the crypto space, nobody, first of all, there's nothing like a KYC check when you want to bid or participate in an auction. There's nobody telling you how much you can spend and what you can spend on. And so these were sort of little culture shocks that we had to contend with. The 3 weeks preceding the auction went into forming this relationship with crystals, getting them to know us better, and us getting to know them as well. And basically telling them, don't set arbitrary limits on how much we can spend in a particular auction. And it was a very sort of tumultuous time for us, because we had no idea how.
I think we lost the voice.
Yeah, we lost audio.
And the connection. Okay, I think, but we do know what we'll be speaking about today, so I think we should continue the conversation. Sorry about the technical difficulties. So we were also having this conversation last night about the misunderstandings that many traditional art collectors have when it comes to collecting NFT artworks, and also the misunderstandings with a lot of traditional art collectors when they're collecting NFT artworks. So I think we have a few things to talk about with Ania and Dejha. So I can start by saying I think it's a different bridging between the two groups, and I believe that there's lots of communication and explanation that needs to be done when communicating the different groups of communicating with the different groups of collectors. And I find the most difficult transition for Picture This, which is the platform that I work for. It's a photography platform, and we basically.
We're back.
Hey, hello. Well, we continued with.
Tell us when you lost Anand, because I think the conclusion, your last sentence was actually.
Yes, so actually, Fanny, we were continuing with the question. So the misunderstandings with NFT collectors and the traditional art world. And I was just explaining that in Picture This, while we're transitioning some of the most iconic photographers' work onto the blockchain, we find it a struggle actually to communicate the importance and value of these photographers that are not so well known within the blockchain ecosystem or with the NFT collectors, and vice versa. So as artists, I'd love to know what you think as well, and we can continue the conversation.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's kind of unique and strange about Dejha in my position is I kind of feel like I wouldn't even say our entry into the NFT space was going from the traditional art world into the NFT art world, because we're also experiential artists. So we were creating large-scale performances and installations and immersive environments that were already difficult to show, impossible really to sell. This is like before Super Blue and before there were really like efforts to figure out how experiential art could be sold, how that could become a practice. It was always just kind of like we are creating something that was a gift to our audience. And that's kind of what we have been doing. And so due to that being a medium that poses a lot of challenges, even in terms of like what we wanted to produce and the technical requirements or the budget requirements, that most institutions don't have either the technical know-how or the budget to support what we were doing. So we were always trying to, create work that, and we have been in museums, so we've been very lucky, but I wouldn't even say we were doing a traditional into the NFT world. We were just doing an experiential art practice into the NFT space, which is also a kind of translation of what we do into a new context, but just to kind of position.
Sure. That's interesting, because we were talking about how we believe that for some collectors the value lies in the physical work itself. So this is one of the biggest struggles we're having explaining. So with a good example, Fanny, so a funny example is we had a great exhibition during the Venice Biennale. And during the exhibition, we had a group of collectors come in. So there were a group of NFT collectors, and then there were a group of traditional art collectors. And we found that while the NFT collectors were very straightforward with what they were getting when they bought the NFT, we had the Omani royal family and their traditional art collectors. They don't collect much NFTs. They're not very familiar with the space. So they had trouble understanding that if they bought the NFTs, they would not receive the physical work itself. And that's when they decided not to buy it, because for them the value lies within the physical work itself. And of course, utilities are a big topic and a big help here. And
Absolutely. Just to continue discussing utility for a moment, which Ania and I are in a particularly interesting position, because we wouldn't call utility because as experiential artists, what we do is engage with the audience as a participant and bring them through a narrative and a story over an hour, 3 hours, 3 months, over a year-long sort of duration. And so for us, when we think of experiential interaction, it can be sometimes, I think, mistaken for utility now that we're entering into this space. But I think a core thing that Ania and I really feel is that, an artist who is a photographer or a digital artist creating work for or with the blockchain shouldn't be required to provide utility as part of their medium. If that is the medium of choice, then 100%. That kind of aligns with Ania and I, because we're experiential artists, but it shouldn't be, I think, required by every artist.
I agree for one. And this is something we've been sort of trying to establish, a sort of a shift in how you think of NFTs themselves, a shift away from looking at them purely as digital assets, and instead looking at them as experiences. I mean, to sort of distill it down to a simple analogy or a metaphor. It's like going and trying to watch a play or a movie. You don't expect returns once you've bought the ticket, right? That's kind of how I think you ought to look at art when it comes to NFTs. That's one. The other angle is, of course, the physical aspect of it. I think conventional artists, when they look at the NFT space, shouldn't think of this as some sort of a magic bullet or something. It's just a new context. Like, Ania was saying a little earlier. It's just a new context, a new sort of a medium. Art is still very much art. Just because it comes to the NFT space, it doesn't morph into something else. That's what I feel. Sorry, Fanny.
No. This is very interesting. No, this is great, and I think we should thank you all for like the examples. I think it's always helpful to start there, but it really sounds like a joke, like an NFT and a traditional art collector enter the bar and see what happens. But it is like both worlds are bringing different things, right? Like and Ania, like you mentioned utility, like and this is sort of like an expectation, like from like NFT collectors, like not to get the physical object, but like to get some sort of utility. I'm wondering, like Ania and Dejha, like you've been, as you said, not going from the traditional artwork to like the NFT space, but you still entered as artists like this NFT space. And I'm wondering if you can tell us a bit about like how you had to translate these things, right? Like, because like use the word utility, and it's like, how do you decide like this is like something that you should incorporate into your practice versus, or like translate into something versus just decide to leave it aside?
Yeah, I have a thought on that.
So many thoughts on this. Go.
I mean, I think that if we think that, so there's three core aspects of Ania and I's practice, which one of them is performance art, the human body, immersive environments, and creative technology, right? And so because we work with technology on almost every one of our works, we have a kind of rule set, which we were speaking about the other week, or the other day here at the conference. And one of them is not using technology only because it's novel, right? Because if you use technology because it's novel and you don't integrate it meaningfully and it's not supporting the concept or what really needs to support the artwork, then the artwork's going to fall flat as soon as the technology is no longer novel. So this kind of idea that tech doesn't age well, but concepts do. And so I think as soon as we contextualize why we are using this technology in the first place, then we have all sorts of really great answers that we can then decide that can guide us, right? And say, okay, we've already asked, why are we going to use the blockchain? How does it support the project? How does it not? If it doesn't support it, maybe we shouldn't do it. Not every project needs to be an NFT, so to speak. I don't know if you want to extend on that at all.
Yeah, I agree, and it was definitely, I feel, a translation process of what we did into, like Anand mentioned, like just a new context, and having always worked with technology and wanting to understand how that technology works in real life, and then implementing that into how we're using it within the artwork has always been crucial. But I also, yes to what you said, but I also, I wouldn't necessarily say that just because it's not using the blockchain creatively or conceptually that it shouldn't exist as an NFT, because I also think we have really broken infrastructures around the world for how artists support themselves. So
Agreed, yeah.
I feel like there are works, and I'm really pro, especially as digital artists who want to work with technology in certain ways. That, yes, but I also feel like I am open, and I would never judge someone who had an artwork that didn't need the blockchain to exist but did make it an NFT, because I think artists need to sustain themselves. And I think it's a powerful way to do that and to connect with collectors and connect with communities. So I'm open to all versions of it: artist empowerment, creative, conceptual, and until governments can figure out how artists can sustain themselves, I'm all pro.
Yeah, and that's a good segue like into like maybe Zeynep or Anand, like about like what you like from like a collector, like going back to the collectors, like what can we bring, like, right, like from this like crypto world, and Anand, you talked a little bit about your discussions with like Christie's, right? Like it's like what should we bring, right? Like it's like there's a lot of new technology and new concepts, and that can really help.
Yeah, Zeynep, you want to go first?
I couldn't hear your question. I'm so sorry.
No, that's fine. I was going back to the collector's standpoint and looking a bit more at what we should or could bring from the NFT space in the crypto world, like to the art market to make collecting even.
This is very interesting because other than a lot of new ways of artists being able to showcase their work, I believe that there's also a mentality that should be brought towards the traditional art world. And it's a very, so as we all may know, the art world is well known and notorious to be an elitist world. And there are many gatekeepers in the art world. These can sometimes be beneficial, and then sometimes they can really make it difficult for some artists to accelerate within their careers. And I think the blockchain really and the NFT space really allows a more democratic point of view and a standpoint for many artists. And that's also something that traditional collectors don't really understand when they see very successful NFT artists that don't have any museum shows or have only been on an artist practicing their art for a year, let's say, and they don't understand this success and how it can be so free within this world. So I think the way that the NFT world and the collectors are much less elitist and gate kept is something that should be brought within the traditional art world. And I think it's a matter of time because this has made a lot of artists really encouraged a lot of artists to continue their practice. As you said, Ania, it's a way to monetize their art, which really doesn't exist within the traditional art world. So I hope this transition will happen soon.
Yeah, Anand, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with that. In my own personal experience in 2020, when the world shut down, I do know of so many artists who made the shift from their regular day jobs, which they lost to the pandemic, to becoming full-time artists in the crypto space. I think the NFT space has the largest concentration of full-time artists than any other demographic or community anywhere. And that's no accident, right? So, that said, from the collector standpoint, I think NFT or crypto collectors have a huge sense of, must carry a huge sense of responsibility because otherwise they just end up, going down the same path as Zeynep mentioned, of becoming elitist or trying to hoard works of art. But by design, it's impossible to hide crypto art or to lock it up in a vault or a free port somewhere. The stories are already out there. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. So you have this sense of responsibility to tell those stories, not just of the purchase of your art. That's just one little part of the story. You have a unique sort of access to artists, which you do not have in the conventional art world. I myself, for the first 30 odd years of my life, have not been able to access art simply because I was made to feel not cultured enough or not rich enough to be able to engage at a meaningful level. That notion was upended completely when I entered the NFT space. And as a collector, I think I carry a responsibility to share that feeling of, reignited self-worth with as many people as I can. And I think all the collectors in the NFT space have that same responsibility to pass on that feeling of connection with art and with artists, one. The other sense of responsibility, which I think is missing currently in the NFT space and which is sort of looked down upon, is the fact that there is no historical context when it comes to NFT art. New is not necessarily better or more beautiful, right? I think we all must study a little bit of art history. I think it doesn't make us snobbish or elitist. It helps you appreciate art that much better. And I think these two aspects, one of trying to spread the joy of being able to collect and to connect with an artist, which a lot of people don't have, to break that elitist boundary. And two, to be open to influences from the conventional artwork, which are positive overwhelmingly, which can tell you how to look at art, how to appreciate art even better than you do now.
And actually, building on that, like, and playing the devil's advocate a little bit, like this, all the current sales or like everything that we see, like all the articles are really focused around this idea to like convert traditional art collectors to NFTs. But so what do you all think about that? Like, don't you think it's just like different collectors, like that it's an opportunity to expand the market?
Yeah. I mean, if I may, very quickly, yeah, so far, the NFT collector has been completely different from the conventional art collector, simply because of the fact that, it's where the money is, right? I mean, if you're buying a work of NFT art, it means that you've been in the system for about at least 5 years now. You have a bag of tokens, whether it's Ethereum or something else, to spend it on. And which is not, the case with conventional art collectors. So I have no problem in the two worlds sort of meeting and colliding. I think it is to be encouraged, not just because of the infusion of capital, which is fine in itself, but because of these other influences also, which I think are important for the NFT folk to appreciate a sort of a physical manifestation of their art, and for the conventional collectors to come to terms with the fact that not everything valuable needs to be tangible.
And I think
Ania,
it's a totally different demographic as well when it comes to the collectors. So when you see a lot of traditional art collectors, they have their own art advisors, and they have a lot of midmen, let's say, that kind of decide and help them choose the works they want to acquire for their collections. Whereas with NFT collectors, I think it's more of a personal choice as to what they will buy. It's very personal what they buy. And also I think they're much younger, and it's a very complete different demographic, as I said. Have your collectors influxed since this transition? Like, what do you see with the difference?
We have, as I mentioned, because of our medium, never been able to sell an artwork or tried to sell an artwork. And we had been asked many times, because we do these large-scale pieces, and of course we have terabytes and terabytes of documentation of, for example, a performance installation. And it's like, oh, you could sell an image of your performance installation. And we're like,
That's
but
exactly
the art,
what not to do.
yeah, we were like, but the art was meant to be walked inside of, and you're supposed to get these perspectives and hear this sound and feel the floor texture. So why would we sell like a picture of this thing that was supposed to be experienced with all the senses as a flat JPEG and say this is our artwork? That never felt right. And so this is also why, even though we worked with technology for a long time, we were like, how do we translate the full experience of what we do? And like, if you're going to collect our artwork, which it really means a lot, like with our first collectors, with the pieces that we've just released in the last few months, it really means so much. And I think if we would have, sold a result of something that was created and meant to be experienced in a different way, I wouldn't feel that confident or good in being like, that person just paid for that thing. So it feels really good to that we took our time, and that what we ended up creating and what we did with this whole translation is something that we're like, we would be really proud and happy and feel like the collector is getting something worthy and a real representation of our practice with what we're releasing. So I think this is our first time having collectors, is through our NFT collection.
And it's also been
So-
wonderful. Yeah, go ahead. Fanny, go ahead. Go.
No, sorry. I just wanted to stay with Ania and Dejha for 1 second, and asking you about your experience with like collectors, right? Because you've had a practice, like as you said, not exactly the traditional art market and everything, but you've been in contact with institutions and a lot of traditional collectors and supporters before, and now using the medium of an NFT and the transactional aspect of an NFT. What you've seen as type of collectors who came in, it's a bit of a general question, but just curious
What
about
type of
your experience. I mean, full disclosure, I'm a collector of Ania and Dejha's work, so you don't have to talk about me.
Thank you, Fanny. Did you say what type of collectors? Is that what you said?
Yeah, kind of like your experience. If you've seen more, if you brought people who supported you before, not necessarily by buying works before the NFTs, or if they're mostly people who've been in the NFT world with, as Anand was saying, kind of
Sure.
the mean and the knowledge of how to get an NFT.
Sure, that's a great question. So actually, the majority of our collectors were already collecting in, the crypto and blockchain and NFT space. So I think it's interesting because what it did for us is open us up to a whole new audience, even though we are, have no allegiance to any one medium, and so often, we're in a live experiential sense, and then we're put into a different context. But this brought us, to a completely different audience. And so what's interesting with that too is that we also know how to speak then, because through studying, these mechanisms, and it's like there's a very particular way that a vernacular, a language, a sort of etiquette even of how you, engage with collectors. And it's been really fun actually to bring our collectors who are more crypto native out of that space and say, we've been throwing these, what they were called privacy dinners. So our collectors were invited to these dinners, and in 3 different
Zeynep was
cities.
a guest.
Yes. In Berlin, Paris, and Lisbon. And it was interesting because the collectors who purchased something that they didn't even realize had a whole other life to it, and they went into physical space, and bringing collectors into an experiential art setting is really fun, and it seems really almost shocking and unexpected for them as well. I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah, Fanny, was your question about who our collectors are, or whether they're, I'm sorry, we're having a little
really
bit of a hard
hard to hear
time
you.
hearing the question, but I think in terms
go
of
ahead.
if they were previous people, there are people that we have met through the digital art world for over the last 3 or 4 years that have been just, cheering us on and just champions, nice fans that we've been in touch with and spoken at their events over the years, but obviously never had anything to sell. So we did have a few people that over the years were suddenly I had to mint your first NFT ever. So that was really nice to see people that had been supporting us and friends of ours in the space that did want to collect our work as soon as it was available. And other times it was people who were, at a dinner and got introduced to the full extent of our practice and then looked into our artwork. So that was also interesting, that we had people that got introduced to our work through an experiential event and then went and were like, what are these women that are throwing these weird, bizarre, surrealist, sleep no more dinners in all these cities? What are their NFTs like? Because it was just an interesting introduction and a very true introduction to kind of the spirit of our practice. So there was also new people through that.
I was introduced to your work at your dinner, so the privacy dinner, yeah.
Yeah.
Great. And just being mindful of time. But go
I would
ahead,
love-
Anand. Yeah, please.
No, I'm just saying I'd love to invite myself to one of those dinners.
You're invited.
Oh, yeah.
If I may, yeah.
Of course.
I hope they will still do dinners, but yes,
Will
I'll
you be
let you know.
will you be at NFT NYC?
No, I was just going to say actually. So for one moment, let's try to not drink the Kool-Aid because we're all very excited. There's a lot of opportunities, and but it's not all pink and perfect in the NFT world where there's been a lot of speculation and a lot of digital art specialists have said that NFTs tended to flatten digital art, right? Where this, digital art per se is very multi-layered, right? And you look at Ania and Dejha's work, but there's a lot of software artists, a lot of performance, physical objects, etc., etc. So I'm just wanted to throw that out there to see what you thought like we should pay attention to and really focus on to make these two worlds understand each other better beyond the disrespect or the total adoration.
Yeah, I mean, the technology will catch up. I think it's important to understand what an NFT is fundamentally, right? It's just a digital pointer at its very basic. It's like a building block. It says, person A owns asset B. The asset could be anything. And I think the technology is evolving very slowly, albeit to a point where it can support like these huge file types and multiple formats and so on and so forth. The best part about NFTs is that they can evolve. The same NFT which has very, very basic functionality or utility or points to something not more than a few MB can tomorrow evolve into something much more multifarious, something that can support way more interaction and much higher file types and so on and so forth. So I think it's getting there. The fact that we need to understand the limitations of the technology and not look at it as a silver bullet, I think is very important. But what can the two sides do for each other? Like we discussed a little while ago, the conventional art world is rich in history, is rich in context, is rich in appreciation, and they can bring that to the NFT space. And what the NFT space and collectors from here can do is to give them a little pinch of that democratization of experience of art, and also to give them a sense of this phygital experience. I'm sorry, it's a buzzword, sure, but it's something that I do enjoy. I mean, the metaverse was never meant to be an alternative to the real world. I mean, we do have 5 senses, and in the metaverse, you can only experience 2 of those. So you do need those physical experiences in spaces. And I think we should work together to figure out how they can be linked to an NFT, which at the end of the day, when you consider all of this, becomes a capsule, a sort of a time capsule of culture. That's extremely unique, extremely powerful, which does not exist anywhere else except on the blockchain.
Yeah, and I think your point of just going back to it's always going back to definitions, right? And obviously didn't want to spend too much time today on it because I think they had more panels about introducing NFTs, but just wanted to point out when you said it's extremely important on the fact that it's a digital pointer or an envelope that the NFT facilitate transaction of digital art, but then whatever you put inside can still be multi-layered, can still be playing with the medium and evolve and change and I think this is something that really needs to be said again. So Zeynep or Ania and Dejha, did you have other thoughts around what we should pay attention for these two worlds to talk to each other?
Love to hear from Zeynep, because
Yeah.
you're really at this bridge
About
about the two worlds coming together.
I think there's a lot of work to be done, but at the first thing I would say would be kind of doing the right communication between both worlds. So community, as you know, is at the forefront of the NFT community and of the NFT ecosystem, and it's really important to kind of do the translation between the artists, the collectors, the projects. So I receive maybe 10 PFP project mails on my inbox a day with these projects of 30,000 monkeys scratching their heads, and it's I think this crash in the past few weeks is going to really help do the cleaning on these projects and have projects with more value and more thought and artistic content put into them. So, for example, what we do with Picture This is we create each drop as we would create a museum show or a gallery show. We put a lot of thought into the curation, the context, the collaborations for the artist and the drop. So it's very important that we have projects that are really with good artistic content around them, I think.
You mentioned earlier when we were preparing, kind of like we heard the same response from many people that came to our reveal at Berlin, which I think is interesting and kind of like speaks to this subject.
Yes. So it was a month ago. Chanel Verdalt, C. Verdalt of Unicorn DAO had actually curated the show at Kraftwerk Berlin, and it was interesting because we invited folks who are part of our community, and this event was called NFT Art Berlin. And so they said, okay, I don't really like NFTs, but I like you, so I'm going to come to the show. And so they arrived to the show, and it's, because, we're experiential artists, it's not, an image on a screen, but it was a fully immersive sonic visual experience with performance. And they go, this is an NFT? They're like, I think I like NFTs. I think I could like them now. And so you're kind of like shaking me up on that. So, okay, I didn't know, and I think that's really interesting. And I think we need more of that. It's not to say that all of the other NFTs that this particular kind of person doesn't like aren't wonderful. It just means that we need to broaden the amount of examples that there are in terms of medium or kind, aesthetic, yes, sensibilities. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to onboard.
And there's also a lot of variety and diversity between all the different NFT artists and NFTs available. And I also think it's important that we clear out the word NFT. So
I agree.
Yeah,
because like Anand.
A very good point. I wanted to throw one stats from 2021 that actually showed in one of the reports, like Non-Fungible had these stats that only 16% of use cases for NFTs was actually art, right? Collectibles was around 50%. And because people learned about NFTs via the Beeple sale, which was an artwork at a traditional auction house, but then most of what people have seen after that in 2021 was collectibles. So of course, when they see like an ugly like monkey and they assume somehow that like it's kind of like the big misunderstanding of like what they are, but 16% is not much. That was something surprising as well.
I think we're low on time. I think we're out of time. Yeah.
I see it was at the half hour. But yes, we have 3 minutes to conclude. I think there's, I'm gonna say one thing. I think the between a digital or NFT patron and art patron and a traditional collector, I think the goal is not that different, right? Like what we've seen with all of your comments that this is still about like supporting the artist as much as like it used to be before NFTs. The way to transact and to like the medium is the difference. And I'm gonna throw out something out there, like, and would love to get a few concluding thoughts like for the past 2 minutes, but I'm gonna say that the crash that just happened with cryptocurrencies might actually help in a weird way, because we're gonna have less of that speculation and glorified gambling with collectibles and more time to actually
exploitation,
talk about
as you
art.
said.
So I don't know, like, what do you think, Anand?
Sure. I think crashes are a perfect illustration of the difference between crypto and NFTs, or tokens and NFTs, right? So there is a lot of speculation in both places, but at the end of the day, when the bag of tokens you have in your hand crashes to zero, you're left with virtually nothing. On the other hand, an NFT is always something, whether it's a piece of art or whether even if it's a collectible. You bought it not just to flip it, but there's some connection that you made with that NFT, right? Whether it's a gaming asset, or a work of art, or even a monkey scratching its head. You bought it because you liked something about it, not just the number attached to it. And I think that crashes sort of solidify that feeling that when you come to the NFT space, when you come to art, the way to engage with it is not to look at it as an asset, but as something, but as a cultural phenomenon, something that you want to engage with, not just today, but you wouldn't mind even if no one else wants to buy it, but you bought it because you love it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I think, I mean, if in person you have other comments, I don't see like the person saying like, you're out of time, get out of here. So
She's right here.
We
She's
see
here.
her.
She's here.
All right. Well, if nothing else, thank you so much for having us. Thank you, Anand, for joining, and Ania, Dejha, and everybody else there. Hopefully next time, all in person in Istanbul. But
Yes.
Thank you,
Yes.
technology.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Fanny.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.